Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's conversation focuses on bridging multiple Salesforce data environments, and we've brought along Elliot Polanco, president of Fluree, and Hans Nieuwenhuis, CEO of Intigris, to discuss this topic. Fluree recently joined forces with Intigris, a leading Salesforce implementation partner, and we'll be hearing from both Elliot and Hans on the benefits of integrating data across multiple Salesforce environments. In this webinar, we will dive into challenges associated with managing multiple Salesforce instances across an enterprise and how Fluree Sense and Intigris can help automatically cleanse and integrate mastered golden records across domains. I'll quickly introduce our speakers and we'll get right into the conversation. Hans Nieuwenhuis worked as a business consultant in the telecom industry for about 10 years after studying electrical engineering at Delft University of Technology. Driven by love for advanced technology, he founded Intigris. Today, Intigris is an official Salesforce partner and has built up an impressive track record. They work with a team of smart consultants and developers in Amsterdam, where they have helped numerous companies smarten up their businesses with Salesforce. Hans, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Elliot Polanco is a seasoned data executive with experience in leading global enterprise data transformation and management initiatives. Previous to his current role as president of Fluree, Elliot was formerly the head of analytics at Scotiabank, global head of analytics and big data at HSBC, head of anti-financial crime technology architecture for US Deutsche Bank, and head of data innovation at Citi. Elliot, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Kevin, great to see you again.
Good to see you again, too. Hans, I am going to turn it over to you to get started.
Yep. Thank you for the introduction, Kevin, and also from my end, welcome everyone. As the founder and CEO of Intigris, I'm proud to present a team that's been a dedicated Salesforce partner since 2010, so 14 years, celebrating our 15 years next year. And since then, we've helped a lot of customers with hundreds and hundreds of successful projects, Salesforce projects, I should say. We tend to focus on a number of Salesforce clouds, and most of our customers use different Salesforce clouds. They don't use just service or sales, but they would be using service, sales, marketing, field service as well. And another one we focus on a lot is Experience Cloud. Although we are a 100% Salesforce partner, our expertise isn't really confined to just Salesforce. Our customers also come to us for our integration expertise. We have deep knowledge and understanding what it takes to connect Salesforce to other systems, like your accounting systems, your ERP systems, even data lakes. And one of the subjects for today, also what it takes to connect your Salesforce to Salesforce systems. We can go to the next slide. Elliot, I think you're on the buttons. So now let's first look at a common scenario that it might be something that you are familiar with or might have seen. It's having different independent and also unintegrated Salesforce orgs in one company, maybe your company. While this sounds technical, it's really not just an IT problem. It can really impact how your business runs in both a positive and a negative way, which I'll explain later. But before we dive into the challenges and also the possible solutions, how to deal with an ecosystem with multiple orgs, let's first think why a company might end up with multiple Salesforce orgs in the first place. You go to the next page. Why do companies have multiple Salesforce orgs? I'll give you an example. What we see recently in the energy transition that's going on, well, basically worldwide, where new companies might form, where companies might extend their products and services. Give an example. So one or more of our customers in the energy and utilities industry, they're growing by adding new services, moving forward the energy transition. So think about a energy provider or a provider of HVAC solutions. that are now moving into solar, energy storage, heat pumps, all those services to move the transition. They're often doing that through strategic acquisitions, and each new venture brings their own operational model, its own customer base, and most of the time also its own CRM system, and often its own Salesforce org. So that is one of the reasons why companies just end up with multiple orgs. Now, another one is regulatory compliance. That's all about following the rules, and these rules can change from place to place. And sometimes companies decide to have separate Salesforce orgs to let each part of the company meet these local rules properly. And that can be an active decision to set up multiple orgs. Third one is complex and/or distinct business processes from department to department or from subsidiary to subsidiary. Sometimes it just makes sense to allow each department or business line to manage their own workflows for service, for sales, etc. And sometimes it is because some departments or companies think they are really unique and very different from other companies and departments, and therefore set up their own Salesforce org, which is not always maybe the right decision to do, but it happens. One of the last ones is companies having multiple geographies or territories, and they set up separate orgs to cater to their local teams and local markets. And don't forget about control and governance, especially within larger companies. Having separate Salesforce orgs can help you by isolating data and isolating processes. So there's several reasons why companies end up, and some reasons are better than other reasons, but it completely makes sense for larger companies to end up having to have multiple Salesforce orgs. Now, if we go to the next slide, as we saw earlier in the previous slide, it makes sense to have multiple orgs. It can offer specific advantages for your business operations. It does come, however, with some of the challenges. First one is siloed data. It's been around for ages, since we started to digitize our data. Data silos are not always a good thing. Most of the time, they're not a good thing. Information trapped in one Salesforce instance, maybe invisible or at least not easily accessible to others. And it just prevents the right collaboration between departments with separate business lines, or maybe you've separated your service and sales. Prevents collaboration between those two departments, and it takes away the right insights. Another issue is data inconsistencies. Multiple Salesforce orgs might have their own data model, their own way of structuring data. So it's really causing discrepancies and making it tough to get that unified view of the data. So even if you get the data out of the multiple orgs, because of inconsistency, it's hard to get that unified view on your customer and all of your data. So you need to integrate your Salesforce orgs or merge them, but that's not what we're talking about today. Merging is a completely different endeavor that might even take more effort than integrating them in a good way. So you need to integrate your Salesforce orgs, but that can be technically demanding. You need to think it through before you really start to do it. And it's not only the initial setup, but it's also the constant maintenance that requires some of your effort. And also think about scenarios where you have integrated one or multiple of your Salesforce orgs. The data model or the setup in one of the orgs might change, and how do you deal with that in your integration? Now, these are some of the problems and challenges for having multiple orgs. If we go to the next page, then these problems, well, they have consequences on your business, right? So let's delve into the impacts, into the direct impacts for now of these problems. Already mentioned before, you kind of lack the unified customer view. Take, for example, a marketing strategy meeting where the marketing team does not have the complete overview of all the products and services that are purchased by a certain customer, let alone the service engagements that your company has had with this customer, and then not having the full insight, coming up with campaigns. It might lead, or it definitely leads to campaigns that really don't resonate with the customer needs and expectations. So that's one example. Another example might, for example, be servicing customers from a sales and service point of view, lacking the financial point of view. Maybe you're servicing a customer who's a bad debtor, not paying invoices or not paying them on time, etc., etc. So this unified customer view is very important for your business. Now the other one is poor analytics, or at least an inefficient process to get the data out of all the orgs. And even if you get them out of all the orgs, it's still poor analytics, leading to poor information, leading maybe to the incorrect conclusions, sales-wise, marketing-wise, etc. And maybe most importantly, think about poor customer experience. A customer, let's go back to that example in the energy and utilities industry. That customer that has bought solar panels, has bought maybe a heat pump, and is now talking to the company again about energy storage. And let's say that was all distributed over different orgs. One sales team not knowing what the other sales team has sold to the customer really leads to poor customer experience. Or a service agent not knowing what that customer has recently purchased also leads to poor customer experience, just to give you some of the examples. Now, if we go to the next one is already up. Thank you, Elliot. So, of course, we've discussed the reasons why you would want to have multiple Salesforce instances. They come with their own set of problems, but despite these problems and challenges, I think the goal for your business should really remain clear. You want to effectively manage your customer relationship through all the channels that you have with your customer, all the touch points from sales, service, commerce, etc. You want to have the 360 view without all the technical efforts or the manual effort that you might have to do getting all the data together. Think about tracking your financial data enterprise-wide, or maybe your sales forecast enterprise-wide, while still having that data in different environments. And the last one, and also the most important one, is strategic decision-making based on data that is not complete. We still want this, so we need to find a solution. That's what we are going to talk about today, obviously, as well. But let's first look at some of the focus areas that we have for integrations. This is not meant to be a complete list of subjects, but there are some major focus areas or subjects when you're going to integrate your multiple Salesforce orgs. And the first one is, well, look at the picture, look at the lines. Every line basically represents a connection between one Salesforce org and the other. First, how many lines are you going to draw? If you only have 2 or 3 Salesforce environments, it might make sense to go for a point-to-point solution, where the data basically flows directly from one org, from one location to another org where you want to have that data. Setup is more straightforward, could be effective for simpler requirements, but a more common and I think also more future-proof approach is the what we call hub and spoke, where the central hub, is the place to go to find that unified version of your customer entities, your person entities, but also that unified version of all the customer transactions. Like think about in Salesforce terminology, the opportunities, your quotes, your cases, etc. Another important aspect when you're going to integrate your Salesforce orgs is it just about physically moving your data from one place to the other while maybe transforming it? Most of the time, that's not enough. You need to also harmonize and then unify that data to get to the what we all want and all know, the golden customer record with all the information underneath. So moving data, physically moving data, it is really about I should say physical transfer of data from one system into the other. Could be essential for operational processes, making sure that the data is in the right place. But harmonizing and unifying the data, it's focusing on standardizing the data and integrating the data for that cohesive and unified view. So just moving the data is not enough. It really takes more smart operations between the two orgs and in the data flow, in the workflow, to come to that unified view. Another aspect is you should think about what should come out of this integration. What do you want to do with it? Is it just for reporting and analysis, getting insight in the data, maybe doing AI predictions based on your data, or is it taking action on the data, or is it collaborating on that data? Now, what comes out or what you want to get out of the integration also kind of defines whether just a one-way flow of data to a central hub is enough, or some data should actually flow from one org up to the hub and down, distributed down to all the other orgs where you need that data. Now, these are some focus areas that you need to think of when you start to integrate your multiple Salesforce environments. We haven't talked about solutions, and we've listed some of the solutions here. It's again not meant to be a complete list. I think there's a distinction between the solutions that Salesforce provides in their suite of applications, and there's also third-party solutions on the market that can do the integrations for you, of which Fluree Sense is one of them, which we're going to talk about today. As we've only listed Fluree Sense as an external application, but let's go through them and highlight one of the characteristics or one or more characteristics of all the solutions. You might be familiar with a product called Salesforce Connect. Salesforce Connect is really designed to either connect an external system to Salesforce or connect Salesforce to Salesforce. They used to have something that was called Salesforce to Salesforce, S2S. That's now a legacy product and has been overtaken by or replaced by Salesforce Connect. That is also marketed as the connector between Salesforce orgs. Its main focus is really to move data from one org to another org. And it doesn't do anything out of the box unless you're going to customize a lot of things for harmonizing and unifying your data. The next one is Salesforce Data Cloud. Product has been around for a while, but it's rather new, at least in its name, Salesforce Data Cloud. Salesforce Data Cloud is really there to activate all of your customer data across your Salesforce different applications and orgs, so sales, service, etc., marketing over different orgs. It will also harmonize and unify your data. And what it will do is it will bring all that data together into one target model, which is the Salesforce Data Cloud. It's also one of the more expensive options available on the market. The next one is also a more expensive and enterprise-grade solution, the MuleSoft Anypoint platform. Again, it's a solution that focuses more on moving the data to the right location. And it's really there to connect any type of data or any type of system. But it doesn't out of the box do anything smart on harmonizing and unifying the data. That's something that you have to set up and do yourself. I listed it, Salesforce APIs. It's a scenario, it's an option. You can use your Salesforce APIs also to move data. You can do basically anything as soon as you go into coding. That's what you would have to do using the APIs. It's a cost-effective solution because enterprise version and up has the APIs included, but it takes a really big effort in developing and maintaining it because it's all from scratch and it's all manual and customized code. And then the last one, which we're going to talk about in more detail today, is Fluree Sense. And Fluree Sense has a somewhat different approach. It's mainly because of the focus on cleaning and harmonizing any type of data into unified golden records. But the interesting part also it is using AI and machine learning in the workflow between the systems that it integrates data with. I would like to hand it over to Elliot from this point on to explain and tell us a little bit more about the Fluree Sense solution.
Thank you so much, Hans. As you may know, Fluree's vision is to enable companies to break down some of these data silos and link and connect information from across their various different business units and business applications and databases. This specific use case around Salesforce org integration is a really good example of the ability to use modern data management technology to kind of help break down some of these barriers. And that's what we're pretty excited about, partnering with companies like Intigris to enable them to deliver services to help companies break some of these barriers in terms of a lot of the information data silos that they have. So just to give kind of an example about how we approach Salesforce org integration, usually the first step is that Intigris would kind of come in and do a target solution design. And as part of that design, they may come back and say, look, the right answer is a hub and spoke model with one-way or two-way connectivity, sort of bi-directional hub and spoke. There might need to be point-to-point solutions. And so I think the first step is really design the target model for each company based on their unique business characteristics, right? And so let's say in this hypothetical, we've got 4 different Salesforce organizations. As part of the design that the Intigris team would do, they would designate some orgs to be senders, some orgs to be senders and receivers, and some orgs to be receivers only, right? And again, depending on the variation, whether something is a hub and spoke. So let's say in this case, the hub could be pure receiver. But if it's a bidirectional, it could be a sender and receiver. And so let's say that they designate in this model, we're going to set up orgs 1, 2, and 3. They're all going to be sending information. What we want is you want orgs 2, 3, and 4 to be receivers of information. And the idea is that we want orgs 2 and 3 to be able to have real-time information about what org 1 is doing. And then, folks from org 1 will just have their information, and then the rest of the company can come into our org number 4. And let's say in this example right now, we're looking at account data and contact data. So that's kind of what's represented by this little A and C box here. So the approach that we would take is we're going to, because we've designated orgs 1, 2, and 3 as the senders, we're going to take the data, and then typically Intigris would work with the client's private cloud, but they'll define some kind of safe place to analyze the information so that we can kind of run through that workflow to process it. And so this would typically be in the customer's private cloud. And then Fluree Sense would apply a process to harmonize and unify the data. So in this case, we would capture accounts and contacts from 3 different orgs. We harmonize it and unify it, and then we go back and we now synchronize the data or push out to the receiving systems. This is kind of a high level, kind of a conceptual model for the typical Fluree approach for how we would link and connect this information. Now, under the covers, what's happening is that we're really running a 4-step process. And this 4-step process is a combination of what Hans was describing when he was talking about both moving data as well as harmonizing and unifying data. And so you can see here that the very first step is connectivity, right? We've got to connect to all the different sending orgs. And then once we have things set up in the sending orgs, the next step is then to harmonize and unify it. And we're going to run through that in 2 different steps. So the first step is what we call a map step. And the map step says we need to take the information from the various different orgs and we need to connect it to one target data model. In the Salesforce Data Cloud instance, the target data model is the Salesforce Data Cloud model that Salesforce has defined. With this approach, you can set it to the Salesforce Data Cloud target model, or you can customize it to any model that you want. And really, again, that comes back to kind of Fluree's ultimate goal to enable you to link and connect any information across any ontology or any taxonomy that you define for your business. And in many cases, you can have multiple taxonomies or multiple ontologies that you want to use to label how you want to find and share information. So once you're able to take the data, then map it to the common model, the next step is going to be the result step. The result step is where we're going to start grouping together and identifying which are the common subjects, the common entities, and we're going to start to link them together. And then the final step is then resync this data back. So the link step is where we're going to take the data and we're now going to start to push it downstream to any, whether it could be an operational platform or an analytic platform, it could be in batch or it could be real time. And then it could be distributed to enterprise knowledge platforms like Fluree database, like our knowledge graph. So let's just kind of go one step further and let's look at what's actually happening within each step. So the very first step is the connection step. And in the connection step, you're in essence defining a set of pipelines. So here you can see a pipeline that says, let's connect to Salesforce org A, let's go out, let's retrieve the account information. You can see here that using kind of a very simple low code, no code platform, we can go connect it. Maybe you want to add some timestamps. And then let's say we're going to, in this instance, we're going to take the data and we're going to put it in the client's data lake. And in their data lake, that's going to be their repository where we're just going to analyze the data and figure out how we're going to unify and harmonize it. Now, again, this connection or this platform here is designed to enable any point connectivity such that we can connect to Salesforce orgs, or it could be other CRM systems. And then we can land it in any kind of interim target location. It could be a data lake, it could be SQL Server. So we're pretty pretty agnostic as to where the data comes from and where the data actually lands, as long as we have a clean control process with the appropriate levels of security around it. Now, after we've connected the data, the next thing that we need to do is we need to map it to whatever your target model is. And so in this case here, you would bring in and you would load a taxonomy or a business glossary that defines what is the information, what are you trying to map and resolve everything to. So let's say in this case, we're looking at accounts, and maybe this is a customized account. So maybe rather than taking the out-of-the-box properties for account, maybe we've defined our own custom properties. So what we can do is we can kind of come in here and we can define and build the model that we want to ultimately map our account, our customer, our contacts, our leads, our opportunities, whatever we're describing as important business entities that will be understood and communicated by the data consumers. We'll define it here within this interface. Now, once we have it, the next step is to then say, we've got to map now the data to this interface. And ideally, we want to build smart systems that can scan through the data and figure out, okay, this data that we have coming in is account, and this column is actually equal to the target column that we're looking for. When we're doing kind of a lot of Salesforce connectivity, in many cases, most people started with the baseline Salesforce data model to start with, and then they've made some customizations. And so it's generally not a very complex or difficult effort to map things to a common data model. But there are going to be cases where we want to connect non-Salesforce CRM data with the Salesforce CRM data. And in that case, it does make sense and it does help to say, can we teach machines to scan through the contents of the tables that we're looking to connect? And can you make some recommendations and say, this is how I would map it to the corresponding target model? And you can see over here on the right-hand side that for any specific column, there will be a data profile that will be generated for that specific element of information. And then based on that data profile, the system will start to make some recommendations and say, hey, this data pattern is pretty consistent with what you've defined as the account sold to field, for example. And so the system will start to make recommendations. And then if you agree, you can give thumbs up. If you disagree, you give thumbs down, and that's how we retrain the machine learning model so that we can scale the process very efficiently. After we've gone through our mapping, the next step is resolving. And in the resolving step, here's where we want to start to link common subjects or common entities together. This is kind of what's called the classic entity resolution problem. We might have the same account in different Salesforce orgs with different Salesforce IDs that are really representing the same thing. Or we could have separate opportunities, and we could have had two different business units both describing the same opportunity but using slightly different terminology, and each one with their own unique key or their own unique surrogate key. And so if we want to be able to link the information and generate the true kind of customer 360 view that will enable the type of analytics that Hans was describing, we are going to have to discover and try to resolve it. And again, in this case, we're using machine learning to try to discover the patterns in the data, to make recommendations, to link different entities from different orgs or different source systems together so that we can then say, look, we believe this should really be linked together as one unique entity. And then we can start to consolidate the information against this one new master unique ID key and use that as the way to link the information before we send it back. So this example here, we're looking at this one use case where we were pulling in information from 5 different systems, and we've discovered 5 different IDs for a company called Richard's Packaging. Right? So the idea here is to, again, use machine learning to teach the systems how to find these patterns. And then again, give thumbs up or thumbs down, whether you agree or disagree. And by doing this, we continuously improve the machine learning's model for detecting and resolving these entities. Now, once we've built these models, the final step is to productionize this process. And in this case, here is where we would say, I've got my data from Salesforce org A. I've discovered the semantic model, the mapping model, so I know how I'm going to transform the data. I've already pre-built and trained the machine how to resolve the entities. So now I know how to connect and link this to the proper IDs that are necessary. And now I can ship it to my receiving orgs. In this case, we said I wanted to set up org A as a sender and org B as a receiver, right? But we can have multiple receivers. And the idea is that once we activate this as a production process, now it's live, right? So anytime there's a change in org A, it basically runs through the workflow and immediately within seconds push it to orgs B and C. And so that's the goal, is that we now have kind of a living system where as each business makes updates and changes their data, in near real time, we can now publish the information and keep the other Salesforce orgs in line and in sync with the latest information. Now, why would we do this using Fluree, right? As Hans talked about, there are a lot of specific alternatives and a lot of different options. So we wanted to focus on 4 specific areas and why we were so keen on kind of partnering with Intigris on this. The first is that partnering with Intigris, this is a very turnkey process. Now that Intigris has a system, they have a workflow and a methodology. They can kind of come in and say, look, it will take you this much time for us to integrate accounts and contacts and leads based on our target design. And this process is something that's very repeatable, so it's very low risk, right? We're not necessarily kind of innovating or creating something especially new about this process. How do we integrate and connect information across multiple orgs? Hans talked about some of the benefits about the alignment, but really the ability to set this up so that we can enable any kind of architecture pattern, whether it's hub or spoke, whether it's point to point, whether it's point to point with bidirectionality or unidirectionality. So any one of these various different target operating model designs, you can see how easily we can set up pipelines and we can set up different models and set the connectivity that way. The third point is that, as we've talked about, this is not just a method for integrating Salesforce org data, but this is a way of integrating enterprise data. And so with this specific process, we can start with Salesforce data. We can start to bring in non-CRM or non-Salesforce CRM or other non-CRM systems together. And then we can do things to like say, now that we've built this seed around our sales and marketing information, Now let's add know your customer. Let's add our ERP data. Let's add financial information. Let's add HR information. Continuously build this data asset that describes all the information about your company and your enterprise. And that leads us to the final piece, which is this then dovetails nicely with our overall Fluree enterprise strategy, which is around making this data interoperable, secure, with trust and privacy so that this information can be shared. And so it's very easy, as we've kind of gone through this cleaning process, to take the outputs of this information and then have it easily available right in Fluree Core. We can take advantage of our knowledge graph to securely share this information and enable now analytic querying, operational transactional management, and all the kind of the benefits that we get from the Fluree platform. So the final thing, and I want to pass this back to Hans, is we just wanted to describe what's a typical process look like, and if you decided to get started, how would you get started, and how long would it take? So Hans?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. Together with Fluree, also we've set up a 5-step process to really go from project start to live unified data in one or more of your what we call receiver orgs. And I'll just briefly take you through the steps. But first of all, look at the timeline. It doesn't have to take a year or more. These are really this is really a process that we can do for most companies in 2 months, 2.5 months, or if really complex, maybe 3 months. But this is not a heavy, complex year or more integration project. Now, what we do is the first step is we really start to identify the Salesforce org in your whole IT landscape. Could be Salesforce orgs, could be external systems. For today, we've been focusing on the Salesforce orgs. We want to identify them, and for all of the Salesforce orgs, we want to have sandboxes because we don't want to interfere, obviously, with your production environments. Then, in the next step, we're going to analyze your schemas, your data models in all the orgs that we've identified. And to come up actually with a common data model, which is going to be the data model in either the hub or the receiver org, if you have just one, or maybe there will be more systems. But let's take for now that we're going to integrate all that data into one receiver org, and we want to have a common data model across all the orgs. Now the third step, and that's really, I think, where the power of Fluree Sense and also the most fun part comes in, is what Elliot also just explained and mentioned, is the AI-driven identification and also matching of the data that's coming in from the orgs. And it's really that's the powerful part, and taking away a lot of the complexity of having to do it manually, with the end result of creating the golden records for what I mentioned before, your customer entities, your person entities, and related and to be extended to all the transactional entities as well, like your quotes, your opportunities, your cases, etc. One of the steps before actually go live, one of the last steps, or the last step, is to actually validate everything. We've done everything based on sandboxes, both on the sender side, the sender org side, as well as on the receiver org side. When everything is validated, tested, accepted, then we can activate the integration by just first promoting the receiver org to a production org, and by just making sure that the connectors are now getting their information from the production sender orgs, and within the time frame of 2 or 3 months, you will then have a live system that will do the AI-driven identification and matching, but it will not just do the identification and matching of the data that is in the systems at some point in time, but it will keep on updating it. So all the change events in the sender orgs are being processed near real time, even real time towards the receiver org. Now, that's the part that we do, but we need we need your support for that as well. While we are doing most of the work, of course, you need to explain to us your the orgs that should be included in this project, but also we need some of the people on your side to explain to us your current data models, what the data, how the data is defined, what the data actually means, and obviously before going live to validate, to test it. But you do not need necessarily to bring in, that's why it's also mentioned as optional. You do not need to bring in people that will be trained and up and running on the Fluree Sense application and technology, although it's certainly recommendable to do it. So this is just the 5-step process that we've set up. It's quite a simple and straightforward process where, again, in a matter of weeks, you will be up and running with the concept that we just discussed.
Great. Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Elliot, for this presentation. You know, a tool like Fluree Sense can be very powerful in the hands of experienced experts, and this is why I was just so excited for this presentation today with this powerful partnership. So, folks, we do have a bit of time left for some questions, so make sure to ask your questions here in the chat. I have a few to start off. Jan asks, do you support European address verification? And also, do you support multilingual interfaces? I'm assuming this one is directed towards Elliot for the Fluree Sense platform.
Yeah, so I know we've deployed into production using US verification, but we have been working closely with our European counterparts and definitely looking at expanding the partnership with Intigris to make sure that we can expand and add kind of global address verification and address validation. So the short answer is it's definitely something that's coming on the roadmap, and we should be able to announce something relatively quickly behind that.
Great.
When it comes to the multi-language question, so today the machine learning models run on most languages, multi-byte characters with multi-byte character support. There's some language and some vocabularies that we don't have support yet. So anything with like Cyrillic characters, for example. But we should be able to cover most of the Romantic languages. Russian, for example, we do have quite a bit of multilingual support for a lot of the entity resolution and the semantic model mapping.
Excellent. Thank you, Elliot. Hans, this one's for you. You were just on this slide on that 5-step project approach, and I think you covered this to a degree, but maybe you can sum this up again. The question is, what personnel or resources are needed from the organization to complete this kind of project?
Yeah. So I think it's mainly two roles or people with two profiles that we're looking for. One of them is the system administrator or system administrators of the current Salesforce orgs within the company that, well, first of all, should identify the orgs, give us access to the orgs, but should also be the person to answer some of the maybe more technical questions when we start to analyze the orgs and the data models. And the other one is probably somebody more from the business side of things. If we start to analyze the orgs, we will also analyze the data, and we will have questions about the data that we see, the data that we encounter, to come up with that common data model. And it's somebody that we need in the team that will be able to explain what the data means, why that data is there, and if the data is important enough to bring into the golden record or not. So it's really somebody from the system administration side, like the Salesforce champion, sometimes we call this person, and somebody from the business side, or multiple persons from the business side for the data explanation. We do not need, most of the time, more people from IT or developers or any profiles like that. So it's quite a limited team and therefore limited effort from the customer side.
Great, thanks, Hans. And I want to double click into the business side just for a second, Elliot, and ask you. So we use the supervised machine learning to make this really fast and make it very, very accurate. Elliot, in your experience, if there's perhaps a large, maybe highly matrixed organization, and we might require a few different subject matter experts, how do we handle, managing those multiple subject matter experts and their feedback as we feed the model and try to make it as accurate as possible?
Yeah, so in many cases, the best way and the most efficient way to collect the information to make sure that we're doing proper harmonization is to crowdsource, right? In other words, as I'm collecting data from multiple different orgs, there may not be one person who can kind of universally say, yes, these 4 accounts are really the same account, right? Because in some cases, an account is at a legal entity child level. And in some cases, the account is describing a specific branch or franchisee. So in some cases, what we need to do is we need to facilitate a workflow that enables you to reach out and tap out into subject matter experts in the business that will allow them to kind of quickly adjudicate certain questions and then use that to teach the machine. Now, the Fluree Sense process has what we call kind of a human in the middle, kind of a supervised learning model that allows you to define a set of training tasks. So the Fluree Sense system will say, if you can teach me how to deal with these like 8 or 9 different edge cases, I will be able to take from that and generalize a lot of knowledge and learn. And then you can assign those specific learning tasks to the subject matter experts. And so let's say the Intigris project administrator who's overseeing the effort will work with the business leads who are kind of the various different champions, the people who really understand the data. And then they can suggest, look, let's assign this learning task to these specific individuals because we've learned from the business that these are the sales reps who really know the information about this account. And the training task will say, are these companies the same? Yes or no? And if they're not the same, how would you adjudicate it? And just the very simple training tasks and feedback that can be assigned out through this kind of crowdsourcing control process, we'll find that we can very quickly teach machines how to get pretty smart about how to start making some of these judgment calls.
Excellent. Thank you, Elliot. Hans, I'm going to bring us all the way back up to the top. At the beginning of the hour, you were explaining how easily an organization that perhaps is going through some mergers or acquisitions or expanding into new territories can end up with multiple Salesforce instances just by happenstance. And you were explaining some of the complexities that arises from that. My question to you is, what do you think, in your experience, is the number one inhibitor of actually solving this issue? What do organizations encounter when they're starting on their Salesforce data integration journey? In your experience, what's the number one roadblock?
Yeah, so I think it's a roadblock that might not be clear at the beginning, but what I've encountered many times is companies trying to integrate multiple systems. In this case, multiple Salesforce orgs. That there is somebody within the company, sometimes from on the business side, like, how hard can it be? We just need to move over some data from A to B. So how hard can this be? And if you do it the right way, then it's never easy, but it doesn't have to be that hard. But I think the major roadblock that will pop up is underestimating integrating systems like this. You need to really think it through before you start. You need, I think, the experience and people with a track record of doing these kind of integrations. So it's maybe underestimating it and thinking you can just do it
Do it yourself.
Do it yourself on a Friday afternoon, and that's not really how it works. No.
Okay, excellent, Hans. Thank you. Okay, we have some time for just a few more questions. So, Hans, one more for you. Can you connect this this initiative, Salesforce integration initiative, to a larger MDM platform strategy that perhaps has data sources that are not in Salesforce particularly?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the main focus for today was to really talk about these multiple Salesforce orgs. There are many connectors, as you might have also already seen in one of the slides, on one of the slides that Elliot presented. There's connectors to any kind of system, especially systems that have also the representation of the customer. So think about accounting systems, think about ERP systems, think about other CRM systems, think about marketing systems that you might have in place that are not already integrated with Salesforce. So it definitely helps you in the same way we've discussed getting to that golden record and that unified data model. You can have that unified view on your customer based on systems outside of Salesforce as well. Especially, I think it makes it even a strong point for a solution like Fluree that you can expand it to the other systems as well easily.
Right. I mean, this is a story ultimately of giving more access to better, higher quality data in more real time. And scoped today, we're talking about Salesforce, but ultimately this can lay the framework for future initiatives that bring more data and more data use cases into the fold. Last question for you, Elliot, and then we'll wrap up. So this person, using this platform, how long does it take for updates from one org to materialize in another org? So I'm gonna rephrase that question. How real time is this? So once we've gone through the process, when do updates show up in another org?
Yeah. So I think, and I just kind of come back to this slide that just shows one of the final steps, which is the activation step that Hans was describing in the Intigris model. And so in this case, we've set up these pipelines that have subscriptions to change events. And the second that it detects a change event, it kind of runs through this flow where it takes the data, maps it to the target data model, quickly resolves it, and then quickly sends it back to the receiving org. And this is literally within seconds, right? So we could see changes that are taking place in one org and, within less than a minute, see the changes reflected in the various different receiving organizations. Now, in some cases, this is subject to design considerations. So for example, the Intigris team may work and say, look, we want to throttle. We don't want too much real-time information, especially for people that are using Salesforce on an operational basis. And they can't see too much fluctuation and they don't want to log in and see a whole bunch of opportunities that they weren't expecting to see. So part of this thing could be designed where you can do this in real time. You can do this in near real time, kind of like a micro batch. You can schedule it and orchestrate it and basically run it on a kind of a more full batch basis. So we're really trying to give you the flexibility in terms of how real time do you want the information. But really, it could be from seconds, right? From the second that a change event is detected all the way through to getting it into the target receiving systems. And then from there, it's up to you to kind of define how much more limits you want to put on that speed.
Great, Elliot. Thank you. So folks, we're almost at the top of the hour. I wanted to thank everyone in the audience for attending today. And just some housekeeping. We have recorded this webinar and it will be available live on demand forever. So please feel free to rewatch and send to a few colleagues. To Hans and Elliot, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for the presentation. Any last words from Hans or Elliot?
Excited to meet customers that are looking forward to bring their data together based on the solution. And thanks, Elliot and Kevin.
Great. And like I said, Hans, thanks so much for your partnership. And we look forward to kind of working together to help solve our customers' problems.
Awesome. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.